Okay, so it's been when was the last time I worked on this knife?
Oh, it's been a.
It's almost been a whole year because I mean this
Has
is
it been a whole year? Oh, it has.
because I started this in March. This is the Rona knife, you know, with the curves that obviously
don't
didn't
matter anymore.
Yeah. So, bunch of stuff happened since working on this knife. Well, I mean, Rona definitely changed a lot in the course of half a year, 1 year. And just trying to do this shape was kind of a nightmare, and it didn't really work out. So, like, in my head, I think I had a vision for how this shape kind of would have worked, but doing it in real life was actually way harder than it seemed. I got some sort of close shape to it, but it's not really clean. It's getting a little too thin at some parts, and trying to finish out this material with those complex like interfaces would be an absolute nightmare. This is one of the hardest materials to finish. It's lightning strike carbon fiber, so it's carbon fiber with copper strands interwoven. So copper fiber. So carbon fiber is already hard to grind and finish. It's just a bitch to do, and you have to be super meticulous not to get that dust in your lungs and on your hands and stuff. And then with the copper strands, it adds another level of complexity because it makes it even tougher. And finishing it, you have to be really careful that none of them are like popping out, because that's the thing. And trying to finish the stuff with like files and sandpaper. Yeah, that would be it would suck.
And also, the concept is a little more tasteful.
Yeah,
This was at the very beginning of the Rona times.
yeah, that's how outdated this idea was, and it just doesn't feel the same anymore.
No.
Anyways, the effect is just not quite there anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right. And so, yeah, it's been almost a year since then. I was thinking about just scrapping the handle, starting completely new, but it's already fitted on there. It's already kind of roughly shaped. And the profile of the handle shape actually looks pretty good overall. It's just changing up some of those details. I'm just going to kind of experiment and see what I can do with it. And it's going to be a lot simpler than this, just more minimal. And ultimately, instead of trying to do like the fanciest idea ever with like some cinematic attempt at a video and then all this other stuff and trying to do some super ornate, complicated handle, I'm just going to go more basic.
Plus, it'd be a shame to ruin or to throw away that material because it's very nice.
Yeah. Next, I'm just going to shape it and see what I get with it. I have an idea for where I want the handle to go now. If you've seen my work before, you might have heard me talk about how I develop my style through accidents and iterations. This is basically one of those moments. It's not going to be perfect, but each iteration teaches me something new or gives me an idea, and I revisit it again in the future. I've been trying to shape all my handles lately as far as possible on the grinder because it can lead to cleaner work overall, and it's just quicker if I do it right. I think I parrot myself on these videos a lot, but I'll say it again. The less work I do by hand after grinding, the cleaner my lines and transitions will be. The caveat is that trying to get a totally finished shape on the grinder is really difficult, and it's so easy to mess things up really fast. When you start adding such small, subtle details in there, things are really hard to keep crisp and symmetrical. Here's a new thing I've been doing: attaching a light to my head. Light is everything. In the past, we've had really crappy lighting at my old shop, and then when we moved here, we also had really crappy light. It wasn't until fairly recently that I added more LEDs directly overhead, which helped a lot. But using the light bar on my forehead also helps a lot because it's just right there. Seeing is everything, and when you can see better on the grinder, you can get much better results. I'm going for a sort of hybrid shape between that one nib style design I did in the past and the semi-fluted style that I've done and kind of adopted for a lot of these Western handle shapes. The bulk of it I did on a medium-sized wheel, but now to do the finer details, I'm using a really small wheel. I gotta be really careful because too small of radius and the stiffer belts won't want to roll over as nicely. Normally, I would try to do this by filing by hand because I don't want to fuck it up really quickly on the grinder. But with variable speed, better lighting, And me making sure to brace my fingers as rigid as possible on the fixture, it helps a lot. It's a lot of checking back and forth to make sure everything is symmetrical and that the angles line up in different perspectives, like front to back, up and down, all that kind of stuff. Now it's time to finish by hand. Luckily, most of the shaping is already done on the grinder, and I did a pretty decent job, so finishing isn't as excruciating. Before, some of these complicated shapes took literal days to file and sand. Now, since I'm getting a lot better on the grinder, it takes one day. I still have to clean up some of the transitions and flatten some faces carefully, but it's so much better this way still. For final finishing, I'm sanding everything to a clean 2500 grit finish. I actually did some wet sanding off camera with some True Oil first, kind of similar to how I would do like a porous wooden handle. After it's been wet sanded, dried, and then final sanded, I do a few thin light coats of True Oil, just like with the wood handles. It sounds kind of stupid, but this lightning strike carbon fiber is slightly porous, and it's known to have some fiber tear out here and there because of those copper strands. Doing a wet sand and light coats of oil after actually make things look pretty nice, and maybe it helps keep the surface more together or something. I've done some handles with this material years ago, and checking back on them, they've had zero issues. So, what lessons did I learn when working on this knife? Well, I've learned a lot about myself and my attention span. If I get spontaneously excited about an idea, I'd better finish it soon or else I find the next shiny thing and get distracted. Second is not to get too attached to any one single idea because ideas come and go. Instead of letting this knife sit for an entire year, I could have just done something else and finished it instead of fussing and stressing over it the whole entire time. Ultimately, this isn't the first vision I had for this knife, and there are some things that I may have changed in hindsight, but I'm still really happy and I'm proud of the results.